So I wonder what 2023 will bring. I was thinking back to 2020, and we started out the year with loads of expectation. I don't know if you remember back that far. Lots of the major Christian organizations were gearing up for a year of reaching out. Do you remember the whole 2020, let's reach out? And then the pandemic hit. It happened, and life changed in an instant, didn't it? Everything was cancelled. But actually, slowly throughout the year, churches and organizations did find many ways to reach out online and in different ways. Who other than God, I guess, would have expected the year we had in 2020? Then there was 2021, where everyone felt we'd hopefully get a better year. And whilst we started with 3 months of lockdown, things did slowly start to open up, didn't they? In the September, we managed to get back together, meeting together down in Connect Life, and we're so thankful for their generosity. We were able to join with other churches just before that to run Love Where You Live in Lansbury Park. Who remembers being a part of that? And by Christmas, we were able to run carols down by the lake. That was a brilliant opportunity, wasn't it? And it was really interesting to hear lots of people still referring to that. You're going to be doing that again this year. So then 2022, I don't know if you quite remember, we actually started 2022 online as well, because so many of us in the fellowship had COVID over Christmas and in the January that we didn't have enough people to meet back in the building. And although we started online, it was a good year. We were able to start connecting more and more with each other and with people again. We came back to the school in 2022, which is the place where we believe God has called us to worship. We were able to run the Jubilee Outreach Weekend in 2022. What a blessing that was on so many fronts, uniting with other churches across Caerphilly and to be able to touch so many different people. Then Family Week. Who enjoyed being back with Family Week this year? Anyone? Rian did and Joe did. Not many others. Anyone else? Come on, it was brilliant, wasn't it, to be back with Family Week? And Christmas, wasn't it good to be out there sharing the good news of Christmas again, singing carols, meeting with people? And then very recently, Christmas Eve, to see so many connecting with us. Let's pray this year that it won't be another 364 days before all those people connect with us again. I guess we're all approaching 2023 and thinking things are beginning to get better. We're starting to move forward now from this pandemic that had hit in 2020, but actually there's still lots of effects left with us as a result of the pandemic. So then, what about 2023? It's a new year, and it's an opportunity for us to take stock of our priorities in life and to maybe readjust some of them this year. I wonder what God is wanting for us personally in 2023. Do you know what God wants you personally to be doing this year? And what is God calling us as Gateway Church to be involved in and doing? I've just gone through some of the things that we ended up doing in the last couple of years. Some we planned before the start of the year. Many of them we were planning last minute. What's God got planned for this year? I guess only He knows what's going to be thrown sideways at us this year. But what is God wanting us to be doing this year? As I was kind of pondering that, I was reminded of one of those verses I love to quote, Jeremiah 29, verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a future. This verse was spoken to the Israelites when they were living in captivity in Babylon. I'm not sure if you were aware of that. It's often quoted. God was encouraging them actually at that time to live well in the land that they found themselves in. Although they found themselves in troubling and challenging times, can anyone here identify with living in troubled and challenging times? He was reminding them in that there would be a new beginning for them. God was going to give them a new purpose, and He was going to bring them back to their land. But what He was doing is He was giving them a hope for the future. Actually, it was about 70 years after those verses that were written, roughly, when the Israelites started to return home. And I was thinking, we live very much in a fast food generation, don't we? We live in that now TV generation, as I'd call it, where when we want something, we want it and we want it now. We're not actually used to waiting, are we? I don't know about you, but I absolutely hate waiting. It's not on my agenda. And for that reason, Netflix, I don't know if you've got Netflix, but it really appeals to me. One episode after another, the cliffhanger comes. Hey, you don't have to wait till tomorrow, next week, or even the next season. You can just turn it straight on and see what's going to happen. We're not really very accustomed to waiting. Who's been watching The Traitors? Yeah, no spoilers, all of the Hughes family and anyone staying with us, Sam. We watched the whole 12 episodes in 2 days because everyone ended on such a cliffhanger. We wanted to see what was going to happen, so we kept watching it and watched it immediately. But I was reminded that that's not real life, is it? Actually, the Israelites had to wait 70 years for some of the promises that God had given to them, and perhaps we need to wait sometimes for some of the things that God's got in store for us. And that got me thinking, what does waiting look like? Some people, when they're waiting for something to happen, they count down the days with a calendar. And I thought, I wonder if he gave the Israelites a 70-year calendar, 69 years, 215 days, cross it off, 69 years. Probably not. Actually, God filled them with hope in the waiting, that one day the future they longed for would happen. And we have a hope starting in 2023, well, not starting, but in 2023, that no matter what life is like right now, God has a plan to prosper us and not to harm us, a plan to give us a hope and a future. They were urged to live a full life in hope, in their waiting. We've just spent the autumn, haven't we, looking at the Psalms, reminding ourselves that life is full of highs and full of lows, but that God is with us in them all. And that's the other thing that God was saying to them in the waiting, to live well in the land. Don't just sit around waiting for the future, but live every day that you're given. And as they did, God's presence was still with them. As we're living in 2023, waiting for God's plans to unfold this year and through our lives, we should remember that no matter what life throws at us, actually, whether we experience this year perhaps the joys of a new baby in the family, or a holiday we've been waiting for since 2020, I think Louise was telling me that, and now she's going in February, or ... fill the blanks with whatever you may experience this year, God's presence is still going to be with us in that. Or whether we perhaps experience some of the sorrows, we get COVID again and it just keeps bringing us down, or we lose someone we love, or again, ... God's presence is with us this year. We can call on him in prayer. We can still experience his grace, just like the Israelites did, as they waited in hope in captivity in Babylon. So I wondered, what does living well in 2023 look like for us when we have no idea how the year might pan out? I believe the writer of the Hebrews gives us some insight into this. Joe just read it for us, but should we read it again? Could you pop it back up on the screen, Pete? It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. We should keep running the race. That's my takeaway from now on. We should keep running the race. But let's unpack these verses just a little bit. Verse 1 says, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. Well, the writer here was referring to the testimony of those listed in Hebrews 11. The testimony of Noah, of Abraham, of Isaac, of Jacob, Moses, Rahab, David, Samuel, and many, many more. The testimony of those who ran well, but also those who got it wrong, who messed up, but they stayed in the race. They kept running, and they won. They got to the end. We can look at others who have run before us and made it, and we can be inspired by looking at them to keep running ourselves. And I just wondered, who is your great cloud of witnesses in 2023? Whose Christian lives are going to inspire you to keep running? I was thinking maybe, Joe, for you it's David. Always David. I think we've all actually been encouraged and inspired by some of the Psalms that he wrote in autumn, haven't we? Maybe it's others who we read about in the Bible. But maybe we look back at others in history that have run the race since the Bible was written. And as I was thinking, actually one that stood out was William Wilberforce, who fought the abolishment of slavery. And we often talk about that, but actually he headed up the parliamentary campaign for 20 years until the act was finally passed. He kept running, didn't he? Didn't give up. And to pick up a more recent example, what about our recent Queen Elizabeth? She ruled the country for 70 years. Her faith being her inspiration for many of those years. Through many personal turbulent times, if you've watched The Crown, you know all about her life, factually, and many turbulent times in the country. But actually, she kept her faith even more and more as the years went on. She talked more and more about how her faith was centre to her. She kept running the race. I could go on. But my question is going to be, who is your great cloud of witnesses that when it gets tough in 2023, you will be reminded of, encouraged and inspired by to keep on running the race? It is important to have those cloud of witnesses. And then the writer tells us to throw off everything that hinders and the sin that it so easily entangles us. What is going to hinder us from running in 2023? As I prepared for this and pondered the question myself, I was reminded how important it was to spend time with God first thing in the morning before rushing into the days. How actually my day was different when I did. Not in what happened, but often in how I responded and how I dealt with the day. I think of that poem that we've often quoted, The Difference. I got up early one morning and rushed right into the day, had so much to accomplish, I didn't take time to pray. Problems just tumbled around me and heavier became each task. And it goes on how hard it was. And then at the end it says, I got up early one morning and I paused before entering the day. I had to take time to pray, and I think how important that is to me. But actually, as I've just said, in COVID, I did discover Netflix. They are my weakness. I like to know what the conclusion is, so I keep watching from one episode to the other. Who else can identify with that? One into the next. And actually, you look at the clock then, perhaps you don't identify with this, and then it's 4 o'clock in the morning. Which itself isn't necessarily a problem, but it does hinder me from running well. Because when the alarm goes off in the morning, boy, I can't be bothered to get up after the 3 hours of sleep, and I don't run the best race that day. I'm not suggesting that Netflix is bad, but actually my inability on times to press that pause button does hinder me from running the race well. What about you? What has hindered you in running the race in 2022? And what are you going to change to run a better race in 2023? Then the writer goes on to say, let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. And as I thought of perseverance, I was reminded of a runner, Derek Redmond. Who knows the incident that I'm about to refer to? Anyone? A couple of nodders. Anyone want to shout it out? That would be a good one, but it wasn't what I was thinking of. He had a hamstring injury, but he kept running. So we've got a little clip to watch.
raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. Raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up to more than I can be.
Wow, I thought Derek Redmond persevered, didn't he, through pain and through agony. He knew the race marked out for him. He wanted to make the finish line, and he persevered. I love the picture of his father coming alongside him, helping him to keep going. And I love that our Father does that for us as well. Do you need to be reminded of that today? Do you need to be reminded, if you feel in that pain and agony, that actually the Father will come alongside you today? I also felt that Derek Redmond was able to persevere because he knew the race that was marked out for him. And that comes back to the question, do we know the race that is marked out for us, both personally and corporately as a church? Joe's already mentioned, but last week, Pete's friend Phil shared on Revelations 3, verse 20, and there were the 3 knocks. If you didn't hear it, you can go and listen to it on YouTube. Let me know if you can't find the link. I can send it to you, because I'm sure we'll keep coming back to that over the coming weeks. I was really excited, however, when Phil was speaking, especially in relation to his 3rd knock. He shared that he believed that this year many were going to come knocking on the door, and we needed to be ready to open the door and invite them in. You know, when I walked away from the Christmas Eve carol service this year, I thought, how amazing would it be if by this time next year, our church was that full every week? If actually all the people that have been brought across our path over the last decade came to know him. Can you imagine that? Wouldn't it be fantastic if every week we walked in and the church was that full? Part of the race God's called us to run as a church is to reach out to the community around us with the good news of the gospel in both words and in action. And you know, as I pondered the thought of meeting every week with a larger church family, I was also a little overwhelmed at the reality of what that would look like. You know, when people come knocking on our door, there'll be much work to be done. Let's not kid ourselves. I love that as a church, so many of us are involved in so many ways. But let's not be blind. Actually, the bigger the family gets, the more work there will to be done. But hey, it will be totally worth it. If our church family is going to grow in 2023, we need to be ready with firm foundations to support all those Christ will bring to us. And that's why, as a church in this first term of 2023, we want to work on building firm foundations. So in our groups, and on a Sunday, we'll be exploring strengthening our church foundations in worship, in prayer, in outreach, in discipleship, and in justice ministries. You know, in all times, let's keep in the back of our minds that vision of Christ bringing many prodigals home this year, and enlarging our church family with those people that we've come to know and love. And as a result, I believe this year we need to prioritize seeking God first. And we need to prioritize seeking our place of service in the church family, and then keep running. And then finally, we read in verse 2 of Hebrews 12, fixing our eyes on Jesus. You know, this is key, isn't it? If we're going to run the race marked out for us, we need to keep our eyes firmly fixed on Jesus. In Joshua 1, when Moses passed away and the baton was passed to Joshua, God said to him in Joshua 1, 6 and 7, be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give to them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the laws my servant Moses gave to you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. I believe that God is saying that same thing to us this year. Do not turn to the left or to the right, but keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. If we want to run the race well in 2023, we must prioritize keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus and keep running. Matthew 6, verse 33 says, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. If we seek Christ first, and then if we keep running, everything else will be given to us. This again reminds me of the analogy that Pete shared just before Christmas of the jar of life. Do you remember it? Where if we put all the important things in first, that's God, our relationship with him, relationship with each other, family, health, church, then everything else will fit in as well. But if we prioritize the little stuff first, very rarely the important stuff fits in. So are we going to start 2023 by putting the important stuff in first this year? We began by considering Jeremiah 29:11, the plans that God had for the Israelites. Well, I don't know if you know, 2 verses later, God said in verse 13, you will seek me and find me when you seek me with your whole heart. If you seek me with your whole heart, you will find me. God wants us to devote our whole heart and our whole lives to him this year. It's getting louder. And 1 Corinthians 9, okay, and 1 Corinthians 9, verses 24 and 25 say, do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Fix our eyes on Jesus and the prize he's offered us, a crown that will last forever. How wonderful is that? Isn't that race worth running? So that brings us back to where we started. What is the race that Christ has marked out for us this year? And what do we need to do to make sure that we run the race well, no matter what life throws at us? So a couple of questions to end. How can we live well in 2023 as we wait for the fulfillment of God's plans? Do we need to remind each other often, actually, that God's presence is with us in whatever we're facing every day? Let's be reminding ourselves and each other God's presence is going to walk with us through 2023. Who are your great cloud of witnesses this year? Whose legacy will encourage and inspire you to live well in the land you're living in? What are the things that hinder you right now from running the race? What do you need to stop or start doing in 2023 so that you can keep running and keep running well? Are you going to let God help you persevere this year? Are you going to let him come alongside you like Derek Redmond let his dad? Are you clear on the race that he has called you to run? Or do you need to spend time with him, seeking him about this? Are you clear on the race he's called Gateway to run in 2023? And are you clear on your part to play in that? But especially, are you going to lock your eyes firmly on Jesus and let nothing distract you from focusing on Christ and Christ alone this year? And as well as the many questions, let me just leave you with 2 quick encouragements. Isaiah 40, verse 31. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. And then Philippians 4, just remember this one this year, verse 13, I can do all things through him who gives me strength.